Do you want music?
Yeah.
Come on, baby, and drop it. Scrub the flow and just mop it. Show these gangsters how you pop lock it.
Es un placer para mí presentar a Michael Stump. Es el compañero SAFe y el entrenador del programa de consultoría SAFe. Es un líder Lean Agile y mentor de ejecutivos en prácticas SAFe de vanguardia y agilidad empresarial completa en todas las industrias. Su experiencia en consultoría y gestión le permite liderar, gestionar y asesorar empresas a través de grandes cambios organizativos. Es uno de los primeros SAFe Program Consultant Trainers y compañero SAFe del mundo. Michael orienta a ejecutivos y asesora a organizaciones de todo el mundo mientras orienta a los SAFe Program Consultant Trainer y a los SAFe Program Consultant en su desarrollo profesional. Michael es un colaborador de SAFe y ayudó a Escalado Agile, el proveedor de SAFe, durante más de 6 años a desarrollar el negocio en todo el mundo. Él nos hablará de establecer Lean Budgeting en Portfolio Management. It's a pleasure to me present to Michael Stump, SAFe Fellow and SPCT, the SAFe Program Consultant Trainer. His consulting and management experience enables him to lead, manage, and advise companies through great organizational change. As one of the first SAFe Program Consultant Trainers and SAFe Fellows in the world, Michael mentors executives and advises organizations around the globe while guiding SAFe Program Consultant Trainers and SAFe Program Consultants on their career development. Michael is a SAFe contributor and helped scale Agile, the provider of SAFe, over 6 years to develop the business around the globe. He will talk about establish Lean Budgeting in Portfolio Management. Let's go, Michael.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this presentation. And I don't have the skills like Alex has to do it in 2 languages, which gives me also an advantage that I have more time. So thank you, Alex, for doing that and trying that. Now you can see it, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
Great. So I'm really excited to follow up on Alex's topic, to go a little bit deeper into lean budgeting and especially how do you establish that. And Alex covered the high-level portfolio quickly. This is typically a 2 or 3 day class, so not easy to explain in half an hour. What I would also like to do, if you have questions, please put it into the chat. I can see it there, so I can maybe directly respond or answer some questions later. A little bit about me. I think Janet gave a great introduction already. So my career was really, I was a traditional leader, not agile at all, did a lot of project management, traditional one, and I had to make this change. And this change was actually really, really hard for me to do. And I think that what helps me now to work with leaders around the globe to make that change, help them in that transition to become a more lean, agile leader. So I had the pleasure to always be a little bit in an executive role and then more in a consultant role, really flip in and out, having the executive experience and being more a consultant to help. I had the pleasure to be at Scaled Agile, the provider of SAFe, to really roll out the framework across the globe. I was working with small startups and the largest companies in the world in China, in India, in Latin America, in the US, in Europe. So it was really great to get all of this experience. My focus at the moment is a lot on leadership and helping, coaching executives and boards really in that transition to a more agile approach. You also see on the right side, I have the pleasure to be one of the first SAFE fellows, but I also focus on a lot of new learnings. I always want to do something new. And at the moment, I'm specializing in agile HR. So not just how does HR work in an agile way, but how do you change the practices like talent management, like compensation programs, like performance management to performance acceleration. But today's topic is really about budgeting. And it is a key topic in a lot of organizations. And before we start, we need to understand the problem. And that's the same if we want to implement SAFE or Agile. What is the problem we want to solve? If we don't know the problem, we cannot be successful. So we need to understand what is the problem. Is it time to market? Is it quality? Is it productivity or predictability? So we need to have all of this to be successful. Let's look at a couple of things regarding budgeting. And it is really funny because we trust our people with very important things. Like the pilot you see here, he's flying a lot of people around the globe, has a lot of responsibility, but this pilot with some airlines cannot make the decision how often his shirt needs to be washed. So there are very clear guidelines how often he can do that. So how do we see that with budgeting? We trust very large initiatives, but we don't trust people that they know how to spend the money. Another challenge I see is we see budgets as entitlements. If I have a budget, if I have more budget than my colleague, I'm more important. Have you seen that in your organizations? If you've seen that, it's important who has the bigger budget, put the 1 into the chat. Then we have another issue. We don't really differentiate between good and bad cost. What is good and bad cost? When you're in accounting, it's plus or it's minus. So it's something that is coming in or it's something that is coming out. But in accounting, we don't think about if we spend 100,000 US dollars, what is the return on that investment? It's just 100,000. If we spend 20,000 more, do we get 80% more of the business value? If we spend 20,000 less, do we get just 10% less of the value? Oftentimes, those discussions are not happening enough. And we are not really differentiating between good and bad cost management. We also struggle to get high quality budgets. What are high quality budgets? Is it reliable? Is it effective? Do we have the right people allocated? Is anybody working in a company where you are looking at the high utilization so that people are 100% productive? Put it in the chat if you are working in such an organization. Nobody? I think there are a lot of organizations that are focusing on how can we utilize the people at 100%. And when you think about that, and that's one of the SAFE principles, which Alex didn't cover, don't go to full utilization. Allow some flexibility because you need that for innovation. Think about the fire departments. Do you like to have the fire department be 100% utilized? Probably not, because you want that if there is a fire, that they are available and they come and help you. So, for example, firefighters are only about 2% really billable or actually doing the work like firefighting. The rest of the time, they are training, they are practicing, they are learning, and they use their time to be ready. And that's something we see as well, or we should see as well in portfolio management, that we have some slack capacity. This is something we should see in leadership. It's not the goal that leadership is 100% busy, but if there is an issue, then they need to be able to support, to coach, to guide in the right direction, to help the organizations to solve the problems. Really assign some capacity for that, and that's really similar on a portfolio level. So we spend a lot of time and energy in budgets and reporting. Put in the chat, how long does your budgeting process typically go? When does the budgeting process start? Annual budgeting process. September to October, too long, starts in August, September. Exactly, so I've even seen June or July, and it's fascinating. It goes until about end of January because we have to do some adjustments. And it keeps middle management busy. And what are we typically doing? So I prepared a lot of budgets in my past. I always know that you never get the number that you put in. So what do? You put a higher number in because you know it will get cut down. And then you make up numbers because you need to prove the business case. So you make up some numbers based on the best knowledge at that point of time, what the results could be. Then if you tweak it a little bit more, maybe you get more budget or budget gets approved, but there are not always a lot of facts behind those decisions. And then in larger organization, you typically make sure that when you are in a middle management position, downwards, you make sure that the budget is a little bit lower. Upwards, you provide a higher budget because you know it will be cut and you want to have a little bit of reserve. So it's really a game that keeps a big part of the organization busy. But how much value does it really create? How much value? And why are we doing it? Why are we holding on such a budgeting approach? It is old, blind faith. There's some really outdated thinkings and beliefs, and I want to share them with you. So one of the thoughts is, when there is no centralized control, there's only chaos and anarchy. So we really need to centralize that. And that's going back to Alex's principle number 9 he talked about, decentralized decision making. So it doesn't really create chaos and anarchy if we don't have centralized control. Second one, good performance means hitting the budget numbers. as a project manager or line manager, does it say anything about you if you achieve or you are below the budget? It doesn't say anything. It says that you can adhere to a plan, but it doesn't tell you anything what kind of value you have created with the money. Because maybe you lost money by spending 100,000, maybe you made 1 million spending 100,000. So just achieving the budget numbers does not say anything about the performance, how good we are. And that's a thinking that is still around. No budget means cost explosion. If there are no budgets, like, the costs will just go up. And I've never seen that in my life, because there may be other controls. And Alex also talked about government elements in SAFE that will help with that. One that is more human resource, people specific, no individual bonuses, no performance. And as my passion is a little bit the people topic, people development and human capital, human resources, the more old term, I really don't like individual bonuses, because they don't lead to better performance. Because you need to incentivize in a different way, and you don't look at individual performance, you look at team and organizational performance. More details means more quality. If we have more detailed budgets, more detailed project plans, we have better results. Not really. I think that's what we have proven in the meantime. And need to know enough, or enough to know. So we don't need to know anything, but we want to be transparent with the information we have. And if I can explain it, I have control. So I need to explain everything in detail, and that means I have control. I have a detailed plan. Does not say anything about control and about the value you are delivering. So those are really outdated beliefs and myths we have here. So what we need to do is we need to change that a little bit. And I want to move on. So why do we need to change it? Because it will slow us down. And there's one thing as a background of agile organizations, and that's also part of SAFE, which is organized around value and focus on flow. These beliefs that we have just seen typically lead to stop and go traffic. It's a big bureaucracy system. We need to do a lot of reporting. We have a lot of meetings, and maybe it doesn't make it better. But it's optimized for centralized decisions. There's a traffic light. You can drive. If it's green, you need to stop if it's red. What if there is no other car at this junction and it's red? It's blocking you from going on and maybe achieving your goal faster. And that's what we see with traditional portfolio management and with traditional budgeting a lot. It's really a stop and go. So we need to change that. We need to empower people. We need to enable decentralized decision making. And as Alex said, that's not something that everybody can do whatever they want and all the decisions are decentralized. It's a really specific framework that you build in an organization. What are decisions that are still centralized and what are decisions that are decentralized? And then that's where leadership plays a really important role to communicate intent. Why do we want to invest the money there? What's our goal of the company? What's the mission and vision of our company? And have a lot of interaction, collaboration, that the people that are making the decision can make the decision as the whole board or the whole portfolio management or the CEO would just stand beside and would support that decision. So for decentralized decision making, leadership needs to play a really big role in communicating and explaining what they want, why they are deciding that way. So really helping them to be more successful. So what we've learned from the traffic example for here, it reduces collisions. About 40% less collisions than when we had traffic light, because now we have put some rules in place, and then it's to the local person at the roundabout to make the decision, can I drive? Should I wait? Do I need to look for other people around? So we decentralize some of the decision making to the driver of the car or the bike, and it's not the traffic light anymore. And this is exactly what we should do as well in our portfolio management. And when I talk about improvement, sometimes I see this. So companies try to respond really quickly and build more traffic lights instead of optimizing flow. So not really what we want to see. So I would quickly try to do something just to see if my infrastructure is back working again, because I'm on a backup, because I want to show you something. I just need to test that quickly. Now I think we can do it like this. So you should be able to click on my picture now. So where you see my name, and I cannot share it, but can you see the drawing there with the portfolio? Okay. So you should be able to make that bigger, or I think I can spotlight it for everybody. Now everybody should be able to see that. Good?
Yes. Good.
Okay. So some changes, what we want to do is we want to go from big upfront annual planning budget to rolling wave planning and budgeting. Think about how many of you have now the same budget as at the beginning of the year, January 1st. I think everybody's budget has changed since then, right? So reality is budgets that we fix at the beginning of the year are based on some assumption, but a pandemic can happen, markets can change, client requirements can change. So there's a lot of change happening, and it will not help us to respond to change. So we need to be more flexible. And that's what you see on the right side here. We try to have a rolling wave planning. So this is a time which is called the PI, which is typically 8 to 12 weeks. That's just a time frame we define. And we are constantly re-evaluating the budget here, what we are delivering, and we are typically adjusting every 2 PI. So every 6 months, we can make changes to the budget here. So that allows us to see, are we going in the right direction, or do we need to make any changes? To be able to do that, we need to change another concept. And we need to move from projects, from funding projects to funding so-called value streams. Why do we want to do that? Because projects typically cause frictions, overhead, delays. That's where we have the start and stop. When is a project finished? A project is finished when we've achieved the plans, all the requirements. But the right question to ask is, when does what we put in deliver or costs more than what we get out, the return on investment? And that's the point where we should stop, because maybe if we invest the same time into another area, we will get much more value. So let's talk a little bit about value streams. And you should be able to see me again now on this camera. So I will give you some examples of value streams in a portfolio. And I used an arbitrary example. I'm using Microsoft, so this is not real Microsoft, but as you know how this is set up, maybe you have a good overview or an idea of what it is. Let's think about one of the value streams at Microsoft could be Office 365, which is now renamed to Microsoft 365. Maybe another value stream is Windows 10. Why is it a value stream? So there is a person, hopefully a smiling person, or a group of people who is constantly requesting new features. And Microsoft is delivering updates, new features to this product which the people are consuming here. Let's use another one, the cloud solution. Azure could be another potential value stream. So this could be a portfolio at Microsoft. One area is Office 365, Windows 10, and Azure. And now we are coming to the centralized and decentralized control, which Alex talked about. The budget has a fixed amount of money. So the question is now, centralized decision, how much money do we invest in Office 365? How much money do we invest in Windows 10? And how much money do we invest in Azure? What is the return on investment we are doing? And then we have a business case here. We have assigned the budget, but then the people that are part of these value streams and are part of an agile release train, haven't talked a lot about that. That's a group of people that is delivering value. They can make the decision, centralized now, how do we take that money and create maximal value for the customer? And we have everybody who is involved in creating Windows 10 is part of this value stream. We have probably legal on there, we have marketing, we have development, we have the people department, every skill that is necessary to deliver value here. So those are some example value streams. And what we want to do, we don't fund projects, we fund value streams which are ongoing. And on a regular basis here, maybe we are checking, we've invested so much money. Do we get the results that we have expected? Or do we need to change the budget a little bit? Take a little bit of money away from Windows 10 and move more into the cloud solution, Azure DevOps, because that's where we have a higher return. Those are the more high-level decisions we are going to have. So to be able to do that, to make this switch from funding projects to funding value streams, we typically use some guardrails, because it's not just happening. That's the same with decentralized decision making. We are not just giving all the decisions to a developer. It's the right questions and the right guidance that we want to give with that. And what I typically like to do is to have 4 different guardrails. So guiding investment horizons, apply capacity allocation to optimize value and solution integrity, approve significant initiatives, and continuous business owner engagement. So those are a kind of guardrails. We assign the budget, but we give some additional information to help people to make the right decisions. And I want to talk about some of them. You see here, guide by investment horizons. What is this? We start on the right side. This is more looking into the future, that we are making sure we are spending enough money on what we are doing right now, compared to what do we need to do now to be successful in 1 year, in 3 years, in 5 years. And we need to invest in the long term as well. So here, retiring, that's horizon 0. And retiring is an activity which really should be done by the organization in a proactive way. For example, to stay in the Windows, Microsoft example, probably you remember Windows NT was a really great product and it was retired. So Microsoft actively planned for backlog items in the portfolio to retire Windows NT. Here in Horizon 1, this is our cash cows at the moment. Maybe in some areas we're investing a little bit more with Office 365, or we have Windows 10 where we are more extracting. So this is where we are making our money at the moment. Horizon 2 is looking a little bit ahead. What is creating money for us in 1 or 2 years? So MS Teams could maybe be an initiative which is happening here. So we are investing, we are testing. If some solutions are not happening, very important to also decommission it, because maybe they are in the market already. So we are experimenting, but we need to stop them if we see they are not successful. And then we have the long-term ones, which are Horizon 3. We are evaluating really cool solutions. Maybe that's something which is related to AI or Microsoft TV as an option. So I don't know if they are working on a TV, but what are the products that and services that create value for us in 3 to 5 years? And when we go into planning, we need to make sure that we plan on all those different horizons, that we invest and spend a little bit of time in all of them, to not focus everything on today, but forget about the future. The second guardrail I want to talk about is the safe, lean startup cycle. And this is one element that also fits well into what Alex just told us. Think about, you have a big initiative, an Epic here, we call it Epic, it's a big initiative. It's Microsoft TV. Just make an example. This is in the portfolio Kanban system, which Alex mentioned quickly, and we make a lean business case for that. We describe what are we expecting out of this Epic? What's the hypothesis? What are leading indicators and what are lagging indicators? We start to build an MVP, a minimal viable product for that. So a minimal thing that we can test to prove our hypothesis. We prove it. If it's not creating the results we want, we can decide, okay, we stop this, or we go back, we rewrite an Epic and the hypothesis statement, and we start from scratch. If it is successful, then we move it into the development phase and invest more money on this Epic, make sure that the value streams, that the agile release train are implementing those epics. Make sense so far? So those are two guardrails which will help us. And this is important because we can say, as soon as this epic is more than 2 million, then it needs to be approved by LPM. If it's smaller, maybe it's a different group that can make the decision. So that's the decentralized decision making. And then we need to talk about how do we get started with lean portfolio management and lean budgeting. So we've seen some practices. Alex talked about the principles. We will always want to connect principles and practices. But the big question is then, how do you start? How do you get it going? How do you start with the lean budgets? And this is an example customer journey where you start with gain alignment, gain executive buy-in. So you need to have the support from executives to make this change. You get them trained, you start to organize, and you start to transition from projects to products. And this can be a longer phase. Sometimes this can be really fast. So I've seen implementations of this within a couple of weeks, and I've seen organizations that took a year to make this whole process. You strategize a little bit, you create a portfolio vision. What do you really want to achieve with this portfolio? And then you can start to execute and you start to establish lean budgets and the guardrails here, which we just talked about. The guardrails, which are capacity allocation, horizons, collaboration, and the lean startup cycle. And then we are coming back to what Alex also described. The third pillar, it's govern. We made decisions to invest money in some areas. Now we want to see, do we get the results that we have expected? If we don't get the results we have expected, we need to think about, should we change that? Is it important that we make some changes to our budget allocation? I worked with an organization where they spend a lot of time in defining the budget for the whole portfolio. And then as soon as the budget was done, no interest anymore what was going on. Not measuring the results. But that's the key. In you're investing the money, you want to make sure that you get the right results and want to make sure that we can go on with the right decisions to invest more. So that was a really quick run through, and I know my time is almost up here. We'll probably have time for a couple of questions, but what I wanted to leave you with is a quick quote. In portfolio management, we want to count and we want to measure. Not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts. That's a really interesting Albert Einstein quote, and think about that when you go and think about your portfolio. Understand why you make the changes, understand what you want to achieve, and then you can get great results. So I don't know if we have time for some questions. That's not up to me. If there are questions, I'm happy to answer some, and otherwise I'm happy to answer some in the chat.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Michael. I would like to do a question. Centralizing the decision is something that is not easy for all leaders. You say that.
And we need some steps to trust.
What do you say to leaders to convince them to adopt these new behaviors on this point thinking in our value streams?
I don't say something, I show them. And I build trust with leaders. Yes, I say something because I'm asking leaders for some time. A leader needs to be open to learn, and what I'm typically doing is a training that they understand the basics, where I can show some examples. And then I've seen most of success when I'm really working one-on-one with a leader or in smaller groups to make experiments, build trust. One leader I'm working with, and that's a really cool engagement. So very traditional. And one of the things a leader needs to do is change how they are communicating. So what's the words they are using? So in some of the sessions, I was sitting in the back of the room with a green card and a red card. And whenever he used traditional language and maybe not what we are looking for, I showed the red card. So he got really fast feedback, and that's what we talked about. He wanted to have that fast feedback, and he was able to change his language. And this is a lot about practicing and experiencing, showing the way how this change can be successful. And that's why I'm always asking, what is the problem you want to solve? How do you measure it? What is the baseline? Because then you can see the change and the difference, because you can measure. You want to count and measure some things, but you need to measure the right things. So it's really showing the way, not only telling stuff.
Show is better than say. Yes, that is true. Michael, I have other question. We are going to ask a surprise question for you and connect with the human being that you are, in addition to being a successful professional. This is, after all, that you have lived and the lesson learning in this time of the pandemic. If you had the Michael Stump of January 2020 in front of you, what would you say to him?
Be open, be flexible, listen to people and adjust what you're doing. So, and that's, I think it's just responding to change, and every business needs to do that. We have a plan. I had a really clear plan what I wanted to do in 2020. And this was not doing online talks, doing online trainings, doing online coaching and online workshops, because I like people. I believe in being in the same room really helps. And being able to adjust to all this current situation is what every leader needs to do and every organization needs to do. Otherwise, they are not surviving. So this pandemic was really a catalyst for the change that is necessary, and it will help us to adjust and deliver better customer solutions.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for your answers. Si alguna persona desea realizar algunas preguntas a Michael, puede escribirnos a través de la comunidad o a través del chat para que él los pueda responder. If there are any questions for Michael, you can write your question.
I see one question here. The importance for the companies when the value streams are well defined and get the compromise of the leaders to respect that value streams. And this is absolutely key for an organization. I typically, step one is I try to get leadership support. Step two is trying to identify value streams and organize around value. That's principle number 10 that Alex didn't talk about or didn't have time. Organize around value. And that makes such a big difference in the success of a company, and the leaders really help to structure that and then really help to make the value streams and the agile release train successful.
Okay, we have other questions. Why are OKRs not used at all safe levels and only is the strategy terms?
Yeah, I think that's a lot of people see SAFe as really prescriptive. It's actually not. It's some things are really key that you need to do it, and some areas are more open. So I typically like to use OKRs for team PI objectives. So you can use them on different levels. They are just on the portfolio with strategic themes. They are really prominent, but you can apply them in different levels as well. And I'm typically asking my teams to write their team PI objectives in an OKR format as well.
Thank you so much, Michael, again.